Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna go probably at high speed. I know that we're on a tight schedule, and I've got a lot of things I want to go through. And I won't even challenge Sandy on what he described as our mission. I could take another half an hour and describe that. But let me not do that. The first thing I want to do is just take a quick look at a few numbers. And the reason I'm going to do the next series of slides is to give some sense of scale. I know that there is a view that Stephen has put forward and others that life could be much simpler and publishers could just do peer review and we could ignore everything else. And maybe you want to retreat to that caveman world. I don't know. But I do want to give you a quick rundown of what it's like out there right now and what it's been like for the last 15 years to get where we are. And I don't mean we personally, Elsevier, but I mean in general the publishing industry. Just to give you a sense of scale for Elsevier, we are a very global company. We're small by university standards, but we still within Elsevier have about 7,000 employees. That does not include the other part of Reed Elsevier, LexisNexis. That's just our science and medical publishing group. We do obviously a lot of journals, more than 20% of the peer-reviewed literature. We work with a lot of societies, and contrary to what some people might think, in fact, less than 50% of our revenues come from journals, and we've been trying very hard to, not by decreasing our top line, but by increasing our top line in areas other than journals, diversify, because we recognize that it's a tough world for everyone. We are a company that has a nice tradition. The original Elsevier company published the works of Galileo, so I would say that our work in science, although it's not the exact same company, we did go quiet for 100 years. But the principle's there. Our mission is still there. Also, just again to give a sense of scale, I think sometimes as I said, you can shortcut what a publishing company does, what a journal publisher does, and it does a lot more than peer review. And we put an emphasis on peer review because it's important, but there's a whole range of things that publishers do. And the size and scale of that for the publishing community, at least within science, technical, and medical, is huge. It's non-trivial. I mean, we're dealing collectively as a community with more than 3 million article submissions a year. We're dealing with 2.5 million referees and over 3.5 million referee reports, et cetera. I won't go around the whole circle, but it's a lot of stuff. And I think that we shouldn't underestimate that. We should not in any way say, oh, well, this can be done by totally voluntary labor sitting in individual departments around the world. It's not true. It really is not true. Similarly, a lot of money has been put into getting where we are today. And again, I'm not arguing that some people might say, well, I didn't want you to spend that money. On the other hand, I'm also being lobbied by researchers to say, I want this additional functionality. I want you to do this as well on your site. I want to be able to do that. You should be linking with other, with XYZ. So there's still pressure for a lot more and for a lot more functionality. So there's a trade-off there. You can go the simple route and say, just cut way back on what publishers are doing. Or you can go the other side and say, right now, because what we see as our mission is within the context of making a sustainable profit. I agree. We see our mission is to make researchers more productive. And if we're not doing that, we're doing something wrong. And therefore, we look for ways in which we can improve productivity. I look at our Science Direct platform. It's got over 10 million articles on it. We have over 1.5 million downloads a day. It's a big machine, and that's not talking about other kinds of hits on the system. That's just pure article downloads. So these numbers say something about the additional investments that have been made just within Elsevier over the last 15 years in the electronic side of things. It doesn't come cheaply. Just these slides are not new. They're a few years old, so if I were to take them today, I'm not sure if they look exactly the same way. But again, it's just to give you an idea of scale. When we decided to do all of our back files, which is, I don't know, 5 million articles or so, this was just the first shipments that went out. And in the Philippines, our contractor built a whole new plant and hired 2,000 people just to do that job. Again, I'm simply saying, don't underestimate what has gone into getting all of us where we are today. Now, let me turn to the subject at hand, and that's open access. Okay. One of the things that I would like to point out, which hasn't really been said in my mind as well yet today as we should, is there are a lot of different things that can qualify as open access, and not all of them are on this slide, because there is another category of journals or publications that are made available freely on the web that aren't author pays there, so they still would be another category of gold, where perhaps an institution totally subsidizes the publication that comes from that institution. But if I look at just these categories, I think that there's a hybrid or a variety of types of open access going on right now. You have author-pays journals. Those are the things we've talked about from Biomed Central and Public Library of Science and Hindawi. You have separate things where you have sponsored individual articles. So the whole journal is not open access at this point, but it's open for authors to decide, or funders to decide to sponsor an article. Springer has an option like this. Wiley Blackwell does. Elsevier does, and that's increasing all the time, where there are journals that are on a subscription model but do open up individual articles if that's what the author chooses to do. There's also what I'd call delayed open access, where there's some type of an embargo period, but after that embargo period ends, the articles are freely available. Highwire is a big example of this, but our own Cell Press is the same thing, and that's gone on for more than 5 years. And after 12 months, our Cell Press articles are all freely available. Then there's the green that we've talked about a lot, manuscript archiving. And there's something else that hasn't been mentioned at all, but I think you should, and I'll talk more about this later, but there are types of other things that publishers are doing to make articles freely available to the public, particularly in the developing world, but not exclusively there. So, just to run through for these categories, where are we today, or where were we in 2005, sorry, in quantity? And I'm just going to put them all up. Those are the numbers from 2005. The total number of, again, STM articles, I'm not really including the humanities here, but of the main literature, if you will, that were available through these different types. And where are we today? Not much different. That doesn't mean that things aren't growing and expanding, but the whole literature is growing and expanding, and the proportion that goes to this has not changed that much, although manuscript posting is gaining some ground. So where are we? We tend to use the term universal access rather than open access. And we say, and we mean that we're very pro-universal access. We want to make sure that everybody who needs and wants to have access can have it. We're not there to hide information or not make it available. It's neither appropriate to the user community nor to our authors. We certainly are pro-quality, so we're going to do everything we can to put an emphasis on peer review. And we would not say that open access journals don't do the same thing. I'm not by any means trying to imply that open access journals are not also concerned about peer review. But we're also very concerned about the sustainability. We think the whole system has or could be fragile, and therefore we've taken a consistent sort of test and learn approach in order to try and make sure that we don't go too rapidly in any one direction, but are testing a number of options to see how we can make greater access available at all times. So, looking at access, and these next couple of slides quote a global study that hasn't been published yet, but and we didn't do it internally, it was a group that's done this, but right now about 93% of researchers that have been questioned have said that access is fair or very or fairly easy to get. And that breaks out by geographic area pretty much this way. If you look at the access on the left is ease of access, and on the bottom is importance of access. And if you look up in the upper right-hand corner, research articles have been consistently rated the easiest to get and the most important, but also the easiest to get. That's the reading we've been getting so far, and by we, I mean studies that have been done independently. That this has not, I saw one study where difficulties to doing research or barriers to doing research was being rated, and I think access to journal articles, and I'm working from memory, I think was rated 12th. It could have been lower than that. It wasn't higher. There were a lot of other things that were problems. And among the problems are these areas that we've heard mentioned earlier. I was very excited about what's being done at Georgia Tech. I think that diversity of other types of scholarly information that they are archiving is really, really important, and particularly in the data area. We did one study, I know, when asking our author community how interested they were in getting access to other people's data, and of course, as you can imagine, it was very high. But then when we also asked them how willing were they to give access to their data, it was about half the number. But I am very concerned about the data issue, and I could go into a monologue on the various federal efforts, and one of the things that I wish would happen is that they would give as much attention to preserving the data generated by the research that's being done as they do to the articles, which are already being well preserved and well exposed. I think I worry a lot more as a citizen that the money I'm spending on generating data is going right out the window because it's not being saved. We are working hard to continue to close remaining gaps. On the left, the SME, or small and medium enterprises, and this is probably the area where I've personally got a project going on right now trying to address what can we do to improve access in small incubator type companies, startup companies that have more difficulty. Yeah, well, I'll come to say that in a minute, but overall the access is not that bad. On quality, again, research that we've done shows that there's no question that, and I don't think anyone in this room would judge it, the peer review process is still highly valued. But separate from, there's sometimes people think that it's only the individual researchers that are putting in things on quality. Publishers are also supporting efforts to try and improve quality. The CrossCheck effort is something that started in the last couple of years, which is to do plagiarism checking, and it's gearing up right now. We've got about 22 million articles in the database right now. We're trying to build that up as rapidly as possible. This is being done by Crossref. If any of you don't know Crossref, it's a publisher cooperative trying to improve ways of working together in a digital environment among publishers. And the big thing is it started with doing linking from references to the full text of the articles. Again, these things don't come without cost. Elsevier spends about $500,000 a year just on Crossref. There are fees there. There are costs to doing things. Okay, what have we been doing? And I use us as an example, but most of this would apply, or much of this would apply to other publishers. In the basic access area, there are a number of things here that we've done, and I'm not going to read through them all, but we've tried to make our material available and to work with institutions or funding agencies that have looked to do ways of improving access. But over and above the direct open access things, we've been doing a lot of other things. And for example, on the very left, right when I started, our Science Direct platform, from the very beginning we said, in response to what our libraries wanted from us, so it's not like we came up with an idea out of the blue, but that to the extent that any of those libraries opened their doors to the public, that our databases were fully, completely available to any of those people who walk in. And our databases are fully available under interlibrary loan. And that has been true from day one. We've never said that you couldn't do interlibrary loan from our databases. I'll talk about one or two other things a little later, some different things, but we've tried to put in as many things as we can to expose more of the information to more regions and more markets. The most recent little thing I added on the bottom right here was the first article that's coming out of it's from CERN and the Large Hadron Collider. Will be published in an Elsevier journal, and it will be freely available. That was the condition that was set, and we said, okay, fair enough, we want the article. You're right in saying collectively publishers are responsive, I think, when we move with the dynamics of what we hear from our input, so that is to say the authors, and what we hear from our market more. So what's our position specifically? On author-pays journals, we see this still as a niche. We're not opposing them in any way. We think that it's still not fully clear if they're viable. Biomed Central has proven it can be done. I don't know how much it can scale. We are going to launch a few author-pays journals this year. We don't launch a whole lot of new journals, but this is an area where we said we want to now, we're ready to try this, and we'll be doing that. On the sponsored articles, we have about 450 journals that have a sponsorship option. It's been, that number just recently went up from 300 to 450. But for the 300, it's been absolutely minimal take-up. Last year, we had a total of 515 articles against the 300 journals of authors who wanted to pay to have their articles freely available. And, it's there. However, the number will go up in the sense that this is a category in which we've made some agreements with funding agencies such as the Wellcome Trust, where they will pay some level of sponsorship for earlier release. We have said that we don't double dip, by which I mean we are fully and completely committed that if and as the number of sponsored or articles increases, we will reduce the subscription price. There's no question about that. Third area on the delayed access, as I said, our self-press titles are there. I asked the director of self-press not long ago whether she felt that had in any way compromised the commercial viability of the journalism, and I have to say she said absolutely not. It's been fine. It's worked out fine. Now that's because self-press titles I think are so absolutely highly in demand as well. But having said that, it's been a successful quote experiment for us. In general, though, we do think that the delay period is determined by the characteristics of the journal, and this was alluded to earlier. But there are different, we've done a lot of analysis on the usage over time in different subject fields. And in the case of the life sciences, or particularly in something like cell press, more than 60% of the use is in the first year. Well, if you have that kind of a pattern, then making it freely available at the end of the first year stands, it's a higher possibility and a little less risk. However, if you get to social sciences, it's more like 30%, 35% of the usage is in the first year, and the tail is much longer. And that makes us much more nervous about saying we could make it freely available after 12 months. On manuscript posting, we do support, we are green, we do support authors voluntarily wanting to, if they want to post preprints and author manuscripts on their website. We are opposed to them posting this on third-party websites or for purposes of systematic distribution. We have been, we stepped up, I think, the first one to say that we would voluntarily to deposit to NIH on behalf of our authors. And currently then we now, well, this slide's a little old. It's about a year old, but We're somewhere close to 40% of what's in PubMed Central is from our deposits of our articles. So that we are helping our authors there. It's a requirement they have, so we're happy to help them out. And in this case, it's simply saying that it's too detailed for you to take a look at, but basically, we are trying to cooperate with posting policies wherever and however they exist. I mentioned that there's a fifth category, and that's making things freely available or close to freely available. We've worked on a couple of programs trying to make sure that our medical literature is available to anyone as a patient or a relative of a patient who needs access. That has worked, I have to say, very well. We don't see it being abused. If you come in, say, through a PubMed or a Google search, and you land on one of those articles, you'll get a page that gives you a place to indicate that you are a patient or relative of a patient. And if you register for that, you get the article. It's a slightly different watermarked kind of version, but you get the article at a small processing charge. It's trivial, and we've seen steady increase in that, but as I say, not abuse. We also make our content freely available within the Research for Life program, which is basically an umbrella name for a group of UN programs. And there are over 100 countries in which we make our material, as far as we're concerned, freely available. In some of them, there is a $1,000 a year processing charge, but that goes back to the agency. It doesn't go to us. So where are we on your policy then? We are green. We say author voluntarily posting of accepted manuscripts is no problem. If, as is being advocated here, there's a mandatory component, the only thing we would ask is that we sit down and agree upon, have an actual agreement with you on that. And that agreement would involve some type of embargo for some, depending on the discipline of the journals. Because we think there is a significant difference, as Stephen has well said, between authors voluntarily posting and mandating it. And two final slides, sorry. There's another option. We have something called Web Showcase, and we're just still in development on this, but where we can provide you with a comprehensive, or pretty close to comprehensive, listing of all UNT articles coming off our Scopus database. And then you could link back to the publisher's sites. It's not just Elsevier, it's more than that. We're in development on this now. We have development partners, and I was just told that apparently, before I left New York, that UNT is a development partner, but I must admit, I don't know where that stands exactly. So, one concluding slide. We fully support the goal of achieving universal sustainable access. We want to measure across everyone. We are very much a document and learn and analyze company. Our CEO is a brilliant mathematician, and he wants to see proof on everything, and he wants to see everything documented and well checked before we do it. So we can't just decide we're going to do something off the time until we can really show it. We're open to anything that we think will close remaining access gaps, but we are consistent in saying it has to keep quality, it has to help research productivity, it has to not be duplicative, so we don't want to add costs into the system. We are very concerned, I didn't mention that earlier, about professional preservation systems. We were an early supporter of Portico. We were an early supporter, actually before that, of the big archive in the Netherlands. We have been on the board and working with clocks right along. We believe that you need professional preservation systems. We'll continue our hybrid approach, and we're happy to work with you. So, thank you.